Star Trek Generations, why Guinan was in the Nexus but not Malcolm McDowell's villain. Star Trek Generations featured an echo of Guinan, Whoopi Goldberg, in the Nexus after she had left, but the film's villain didn't get the same treatment. Generations was one of Star Trek's most ambitious film projects, bridging the gap between the Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek, the Next Generation movies. The film's plot mainly focused on TNG's cast of characters, but incorporated characters from TOS, including Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner, in some surprising ways. The plot's driving force was the Nexus, an energy ribbon and portal to an alternate reality that granted the person inhabiting it their dream life. Generous villain, D'Artolian Sauron, Malcolm McDowell, attempted a dangerous plan that would have destroyed an entire planet to return to the Nexus, prompting the crew of the USS Enterprise D to try and stop him. During the film's climax, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, was caught in the Nexus, where he encountered a version of Guinan who had also been a previous resident. However, the fact that only Guinan had a Nexus echo raises questions. Since both Guinan and Sauron were residents of the Nexus, it doesn't make sense why Guinan left an impression while Sauron did not. However, there are a few explanations why this might be the case. For one thing, Guinan has always been shown to have unexplained abilities related to telepathy and understanding of space-time. Although all El-Orians may have these abilities, Guinan was and is the most well-established member of her species. She may possess powers that not all El-Orians share, which could explain how she was able to leave an echo so strong it could talk to Picard. The other possibility is that Sauron did have an echo in the Nexus that Picard never met. Guinan's echo likely appeared to Picard because of their close relationship, something he did not share with Sauron. It's entirely possible that all people who inhabit the Nexus leave some kind of impression even if they escape, and Sauron's obsession with the Nexus was certainly strong enough to support the idea. The fact that Picard didn't encounter Sauron's echo may have just been luck on his part. However, the simplest and only confirmable explanation has nothing to do with Nexuses in universe lore. Ultimately, the real reason there is no explanation for Guinan's echo comes down to the fact that the Nexus was poorly conceived. Although the Nexus was a central part of Star Trek Generations, it was never fully fleshed out or explained in a way that made sense. Generations needed some way for Captain Kirk to meet Captain Picard, which was ultimately the only purpose the Nexus served. Using it to hold Kirk in suspended animation until the 24th century was the Nexus's reason for existing, and Generations' creative team hand-waved a lot of its other more ridiculous qualities. While suspense of disbelief makes it possible to watch Star Trek Generations and understand the Nexus, it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. In fact, Guinan's echo isn't even the most important unanswered question about the Nexus, given its connection to Kirk and his death. Additionally, the Nexus has never made an appearance in another Star Trek movie or TV show, making it an anomaly in the timeline and leaving no room for its further exploration. If another project ever decides to bring the Nexus back, the franchise would do well to explain some of its more obscure qualities. In Star Trek Generations, one of the most perplexing and intriguing elements of the plot revolves around the Nexus, a mysterious and fantastical ribbon of energy that serves as a key component to the film's exploration of time, desire, and reality. The Nexus represents a kind of utopia where time has no meaning, and anyone who enters it can experience their greatest wishes and live in a state of perpetual bliss. This otherworldly force sets up the film's main antagonist, Dr. Tolian Sauron, played by Malcolm McDowell, and his obsessive quest to re-enter the Nexus after being torn away from it decades earlier. But the same Nexus also holds a deep connection to Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg, a character known for her wisdom, calm demeanor, and mysterious backstory. One of the questions that arises in Star Trek Generations is why Guinan, who had been inside the Nexus before, was able to escape its pull, while Sauron remains fixated on returning. What makes her relationship with the Nexus different from Sauron's? And why was she able to move on when Sauron could not? Guinan's role in the Nexus and how it contrasts with Sauron's obsession provides a fascinating window into the film's themes of loss, longing, and the human capacity for resilience. To fully appreciate the narrative distinction between Guinan and Sauron in relation to the Nexus, it is important to understand who they are as characters and how their unique emotional and psychological landscapes shape their relationships to this cosmic anomaly. Guinan's wisdom and emotional stability. Guinan has always been one of Star Trek the next generation's most enigmatic characters. With her vast knowledge of the universe, her long lifespan, and her seemingly otherworldly perspective on time and existence. In the film, it's revealed that Guinan had previously entered the Nexus when her people, the El-Orians, were swept up in its path. However, unlike Saran, who became obsessed with returning to the Nexus to live within its illusionary pleasures, Guinan was able to resume her life after being rescued. One explanation for this difference lies in Guinan's emotional stability and wisdom. Throughout Star Trek, Guinan is portrayed as someone who has come to terms with loss and change in a way that most people cannot. The Nexus, by design, is seductive because it gives individuals what they desire, most often something they have lost or longed for. For someone like Saran, who is consumed by grief over the destruction of his homeworld and the loss of his loved ones, the Nexus is more than just a paradise, it's a way to erase his pain and reclaim a life that was taken from him. In contrast, Guinan seems to have a profound understanding of the impermanence of life and the necessity of moving forward. She acknowledges that the Nexus is a kind of trap, a false reality that prevents growth and change. Because of this wisdom, she does not let herself become ensnared by its allure. In Generations, Guinan even warns Captain Picard about the dangers of the Nexus, emphasizing that while it may feel real, it is not. This reflects her ability to differentiate between the fantasy of the Nexus and the actual reality outside it. Her inner strength allows her to carry on after her brief time in the Nexus, while Saran is left broken, unable to accept that his time there has ended. Saran's obsession with the Nexus, by contrast, Saran's fixation on the Nexus highlights the film's exploration of obsession and the human tendency to cling to the past. Saran's desire to return to the Nexus is driven by an inability to accept the loss of his world and his people. The Nexus represents a place where he can escape the unbearable pain of that loss. Saran's single-minded pursuit of the Nexus, even to the point of destroying entire star systems, underscores the depth of his despair and his unwillingness to face reality. Unlike Guinan, who understands that life is defined by its struggles as much as its joys, Saran views life outside the Nexus as a form of suffering. His desire to escape into the Nexus forever reflects a deeper refusal to accept life's impermanence. For Saran, the Nexus is a way to deny the inevitable passage of time and the pain that comes with it. In this sense, the Nexus becomes more than a mere fantasy, it's a symbol of his refusal to confront the pain of reality. This difference between Guinan and Saran can be seen as a reflection of their respective psychological states. Guinan's ability to leave the Nexus and continue living stems from her acceptance of life's transience and her resilience in the face of suffering. Saran's obsession, on the other hand, reveals his inability to cope with loss and his desperate need for an escape. Why was Saran trapped? Another interesting point to consider is the nature of the Nexus itself. While it provides an idealized reality to those who enter, it doesn't force anyone to stay. This is evident from the fact that Guinan was able to leave after being rescued. However, for Saran, the Nexus wasn't just a temporary experience, it became an addiction, a place where he could relive the moments that gave him comfort. His inability to let go of the Nexus reflects the darker side of its promise. While the Nexus gives its inhabitants what they want,